Every breathe in, breathe out brought her closer to something she never consented to. Alexandra Kane had built her empire one 16-hour day at a time. At 35, she was the youngest VP in the history of Meridian Financial, commanding a corner office on the 42nd floor of Manhattan's financial district, with views that made lesser executives weep with envy. But success had come at a cost that was slowly killing her from the inside out. The panic attacks started during the Morrison acquisition, her heart racing at 3 a.m. as she stared at spreadsheets that blurred together, her chest tight with anxiety that felt like drowning in air. Sleep became a luxury she couldn't afford, replaced by caffeine and prescription stimulants that kept her sharp during 18-hour negotiations, but left her hollow and shaking when she finally collapsed into her empty penthouse apartment. "You need help," her assistant Marcus had said after finding her hyperventilating in the executive bathroom. "Professional help. There's this meditation teacher, very exclusive, works with high-level executives, Master Kai Ashworth. He's supposed to work miracles." Alexandra had always dismissed meditation as hippie nonsense, but desperation made her consider options she'd normally reject. When she could barely remember her last full night of sleep, when her hands shook so badly she couldn't sign documents, even ancient breathing exercises seemed worth trying. The Ashworth Center for Mindful Living occupied the top floor of a converted warehouse in Tribeca, accessible only by private elevator with a key code that changed weekly. The space was an oasis of calm in the chaos of Manhattan. White walls, flowing water features, the soft sound of Tibetan singing bowls, creating an atmosphere that immediately began to unknot the tension in Alexandra's shoulders. "Alexandra Kane," came a voice like warm honey, and she turned to see Master Kai Ashworth himself approaching across the polished concrete floor. He was nothing like the meditation teachers she'd imagined. Tall and lean, with silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a way that emphasized sharp cheekbones, he moved with the fluid grace of someone completely comfortable in his own skin. His clothes were simple but expensive, linen pants and a cashmere Henley that suggested wealth without ostentation. "Thank you for seeing me on such short notice," Alexandra said, suddenly aware of how corporate and uptight she must appear in her Armani suit and 4-inch heels. "Peace cannot wait for convenience," Kai said, his dark eyes studying her with an intensity that made her feel simultaneously exposed and understood. "Your energy is screaming, Alexandra. When did you last breathe without thinking about the next breath?" The question was so accurate it made her chest tighten. "I don't remember." "Of course you don't," Kai said with compassionate understanding. "The mind that never rests eventually forgets how to be still, but we can teach it to remember. Will you trust me to guide you back to yourself?" Something about his voice, his presence, made Alexandra nod before she'd fully processed the question. "Yes, I need to find some peace." Kai smiled, an expression that transformed his austere features into something almost magnetic. "Then let us begin your journey home." He led her to a private meditation room that was even more serene than the main space. Soft lighting, silk cushions arranged on Persian rugs, the subtle scent of sandalwood that seemed to slow her pulse just by breathing it in. "Sit," Kai instructed, settling gracefully onto a cushion across from her. "Close your eyes. For the next hour, nothing exists except your breath and my voice. Will you surrender to that, Alexandra?" The word surrender should have set off alarm bells for a woman who'd built her career on control and dominance. Instead, sitting in that peaceful space with Kai's warm voice washing over her, it sounded like salvation. "Yes," she whispered, her eyes fluttering closed. "Breathe in." Kai's voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, rich and hypnotic. "Breathe out. Let each exhale carry away the weight you've been carrying." What followed was unlike anything Alexandra had ever experienced. Kai's voice guided her through breathing exercises that seemed to unlock tension she'd been holding for years. With each inhale and exhale, she felt layers of stress and anxiety peeling away, replaced by a floating sensation that was almost euphoric. "That's it," Kai murmured, his voice seeming to resonate in her bones. "Let go completely. Trust me to hold space for you while you rest." Time became meaningless. Alexandra might have been sitting there for minutes or hours, All she knew was the rhythm of her breath, the soothing cadence of Kai's instructions, and a peace she hadn't felt since childhood. When she finally opened her eyes, the room seemed to glow with golden light, and Kai was watching her with an expression of deep satisfaction. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Different," Alexandra said, and she meant it. Her hands weren't shaking, her chest didn't feel tight, and for the first time in months, her mind felt quiet, like I've been reset. "You have begun to remember what peace feels like," Kai said, rising fluidly to his feet. "But this is only the beginning. True transformation requires commitment, regular practice. Are you ready for that level of surrender?" "Yes," Alexandra said without hesitation. "When can I come back?" "Tomorrow," Kai said. "Same time." "Your nervous system needs consistent retraining to break patterns built over years." Walking back to her office, Alexandra felt like she was floating. Colors seemed brighter, sounds clearer, and the constant anxiety that had been her companion for months was blissfully absent. For the first time in years, she left work at 7 p.m. and actually slept through the night without medication. The next day's session was even more intense. Kai introduced what he called advanced breathing techniques, complex patterns of inhalation and exhalation that required complete focus and seemed to alter her consciousness in profound ways. "Breathe in for 8 counts," Kai instructed, his voice now familiar and comforting. "Hold for 4, out for 8. Let the rhythm carry you deeper." As Alexandra followed his instructions, she felt herself sinking into a state that was deeper than sleep, but more aware than waking. In this floating space, Kai's voice became the only anchor to reality. "You are safe here." His voice seemed to come from inside her own head, completely safe to let go of control, to trust, to surrender everything to me. Alexandra felt herself nodding, though she wasn't sure if the movement was real or imagined. In this altered state, Kai's words felt like absolute truth, penetrating directly into her subconscious without the filter of her logical mind. When she emerged from the session, Alexandra felt renewed, but also strangely empty, like something had been hollowed out of her, and she couldn't quite remember what it was. "How do you feel?" Kai asked, his hand briefly touching her shoulder in what felt like a blessing. "Peaceful," Alexandra said, though there was something nagging at the edge of her consciousness, something she couldn't quite grasp. But also, I don't know, different somehow. "Transformation is rarely comfortable," Kai said with understanding. "You're releasing patterns that no longer serve you. It's natural to feel disoriented as your true self emerges." Over the following weeks, Alexandra's sessions with Kai became the centerpiece of her existence. She rearranged meetings, canceled social obligations, and found herself thinking constantly about the peace she found in his meditation room. But the sessions were changing. What had begun as simple breathing exercises evolved into something more intimate and intense. Kai introduced healing touch. As part of the meditation, his hands placed on her shoulders, her back, areas he claimed carried stored trauma that needed to be released through sacred contact. "Breathe in," Kai would murmur, his hands working knots of tension from her neck and shoulders. "Let my touch carry away the pain you've been holding." His touch was skilled, professional, but there was something else, an intimacy that felt both healing and dangerous. Alexandra found herself craving these moments of physical contact, the way his hands seemed to know exactly where she needed healing. "You carry so much tension here," Kai observed during one session, his hands working the muscles of her lower back as she lay face down on a massage table he'd introduced. "Your body has been crying out for proper attention." Alexandra murmured agreement, lost in the sensation of being truly cared for, truly seen. When was the last time anyone had touched her with such focused attention? When had anyone made her physical comfort their sole priority? "Breathe deeper," Kai instructed, his hands working lower to areas that felt more intimate than therapeutic. "Trust me to heal what has been wounded." In her altered state, floating in the space between consciousness and dreams, Alexandra felt completely safe surrendering to Kai's touch. His hands seemed to know her body better than she knew it herself, finding sources of tension and pleasure she'd forgotten existed. But when she emerged from these deeper sessions, Alexandra began to notice gaps in her memory. She would arrive at Kai's studio in daylight and leave in darkness, with only fragmented memories of the hours in between. Sometimes she would find her clothes disheveled, her hair mussed, her body feeling languid in ways that suggested
something she couldn't quite remember. "Is it normal to feel so disoriented after meditation?" she asked Kai one evening, trying to piece together the missing hours. "Advanced techniques can affect memory," Kai explained, his voice soothing and authoritative. "You're accessing parts of consciousness that exist beyond ordinary awareness. The ego mind can't always process these deeper experiences." His explanation made sense, or at least it felt like it should make sense. Alexandra was achieving the peace she desperately sought, sleeping better than she had in years, performing brilliantly at work with newfound calm and focus. If the cost was a few lost hours and some confusion, wasn't it worth it? But the gaps were getting longer, more frequent. Alexandra would sometimes wake up from meditation sessions to find herself in different clothes, or discover items in her purse she didn't remember purchasing. Once she found a hotel keycard in her wallet for a place she'd never been. Most disturbing were the dreams, or were they memories that came in fragments? Images of intimate encounters, of Kai's hands on her body in ways that felt both familiar and shocking, of herself responding with passion she didn't remember feeling. "I think something might be wrong with my memory," Alexandra finally admitted to her doctor during a routine checkup. "I'm having blackouts, gaps where I can't remember hours of my day." Dr. Sarah Chen, Alexandra's physician for over a decade, looked concerned. "Have you started any new medications? Any changes to your routine? Increased alcohol consumption?" "No, nothing like that, but I have been doing intensive meditation sessions. Could that affect memory?" Dr. Chen's expression grew more serious. "Meditation shouldn't cause memory loss. Who is conducting these sessions?" Alexandra gave her Kai's information, and Dr. Chen promised to research his credentials. What she found was troubling. "Alexandra," Dr. Chen called her personally that evening, "I looked into this Kai Ashworth. His credentials are questionable. He has no formal training in meditation or therapy that I can verify. There have also been complaints filed with the state licensing board about inappropriate conduct during sessions." The news hit Alexandra like cold water. What kind of complaints? Sexual misconduct, exploitation during altered states of consciousness, unauthorized recording of private sessions. "You need to stop seeing him immediately." Alexandra hung up the phone with her mind reeling. Sexual misconduct, recording. But Kai was helping her, healing her, giving her the peace she desperately needed. The accusations had to be from women who couldn't handle the intensity of true transformation. But doubt, once planted, began to grow. Alexandra started paying closer attention to her sessions with Kai, trying to remain more alert during the breathing exercises, fighting against the floating sensation that usually claimed her. It was during one of these more conscious sessions that she noticed the cameras. They were well hidden, disguised as decorative elements or air purifiers, but once she knew to look for them, they were unmistakable. Multiple angles covering the meditation room, including the massage table where she'd been lying unconscious for hours at a time. "Kai," she said carefully, "are there security cameras in here?" His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his dark eyes. "For protection," he said smoothly. "High-profile clients require discretion and security documentation." "Documentation of what?" Alexandra pressed. "Of sessions, for insurance purposes, therapeutic records." His voice carried the same hypnotic quality that had always soothed her, but now it sounded calculated, manipulative. That night, Alexandra couldn't sleep. She researched Kai online more thoroughly than she'd ever researched a business deal, and what she found made her physically ill. Kai Ashworth's real name was Kevin Walsh, a former massage therapist who'd lost his license for sexual assault. The meditation center was a front for what appeared to be an elaborate operation targeting wealthy, vulnerable women. There were forum posts from victims describing experiences identical to Alexandra's: the gaps in memory, the inappropriate touching during healing sessions, the feeling of being violated in ways they couldn't quite remember. Most damning was a video testimonial from a woman in Los Angeles who claimed Kai had been drugging clients during sessions, recording intimate encounters while they were unconscious, and using the footage for blackmail. Alexandra felt sick as she realized the scope of what had been done to her. The advanced breathing techniques weren't meditation. They were hypnosis designed to make her compliant and submissive. The healing touch was sexual assault. The gaps in her memory weren't spiritual transcendence. They were evidence of systematic abuse. But she needed proof. She needed evidence that would stand up in court. and protect other women from becoming victims. Over the next week, Alexandra planned her investigation with the same strategic thinking that had made her successful in business. She purchased a hidden camera small enough to conceal in her jewelry, researched the drugs commonly used to facilitate assault, and arranged for a friend to check on her after each session. Most importantly, she scheduled what would be her final appointment with Kai. "You seem different today," Kai observed as they began the session. "More resistant. Are you holding back from the work?" "I want to go deeper," Alexandra lied, settling onto the meditation cushion. "I want to surrender completely." Kai's expression grew predatory, though he tried to hide it behind his usual spiritual persona. "Complete surrender requires absolute trust. Are you ready for that level of commitment?" "Yes," Alexandra said, activating her hidden camera. "I trust you completely." What followed was the most horrifying hour of Alexandra's life, made worse by the fact that she remained conscious throughout the assault. Kai's breathing techniques were designed to induce a trance-like state, but Alexandra fought against the hypnosis, documenting every violation while appearing to be unconscious. She watched Kai transform from spiritual guide to sexual predator, touching her intimately while she appeared to be in a deep meditative state, positioning her body for the cameras he thought she didn't know about, whispering degrading comments about her willingness and compliance. "Such a good student," he murmured as he violated her trust and her body. "So eager to surrender, so desperate for guidance. They're always the easiest to control." When the session ended and Kai helped her to consciousness, Alexandra had to fight not to vomit. She maintained her disoriented, grateful persona while internally screaming with rage and violation. "How do you feel?" Kai asked with false concern. "Transformed," Alexandra managed to say. "Completely transformed." That evening, Alexandra took her evidence to the FBI. Agent Maria Santos, who specialized in sexual assault cases involving positions of trust, listened to Alexandra's story with growing anger. "You're incredibly brave," Agent Santos told her after reviewing the hidden camera footage. "This is exactly what we need to stop him." The investigation revealed that Kai Kevin had been running similar operations in 4 different states over the past 6 years. He'd victimized dozens of women, always targeting successful, stressed professionals who were seeking help for anxiety and burnout. His method was always the same: establish himself as a spiritual authority, use hypnotic techniques disguised as meditation to make victims compliant, assault them while they were unconscious, and document everything for potential blackmail. He'd amassed hundreds of hours of footage and had been selling some of it to specialized websites that catered to viewers who were aroused by unconscious women. The arrest happened during what Kai thought would be a normal session with a new client, an undercover FBI agent posing as a stressed attorney. As he began his usual routine of hypnotic breathing exercises, federal agents burst through the door. "Kevin Walsh," Agent Santos announced as they placed handcuffs on the man Alexandra had known as Master Kai. "You're under arrest for sexual assault, drugging victims, illegal recording, and operating a criminal enterprise." The trial made national headlines as more victims came forward. Alexandra testified about her experience, helping prosecutors build a case that resulted in Kevin Walsh being sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. But the legal victory couldn't undo the months of violation, the shattering of Alexandra's ability to trust her own perceptions, the knowledge that her desperate search for peace had made her vulnerable to a predator who'd specifically targeted women like her. Recovery was slow and painful. Alexandra entered legitimate therapy with a licensed psychologist who specialized in helping survivors of sexual assault and mind control. She learned about the techniques Kevin had used, legitimate hypnotic methods corrupted for exploitation, breathing exercises that were actually induction techniques designed to bypass conscious resistance. "He targeted you specifically because of your intelligence and success," Dr. Elizabeth Harper explained during one of their sessions. "Predators like this look for high-achieving women who are isolated by their success and desperate enough to try alternative healing methods." It took months for Alexandra to rebuild her sense of agency and self-trust. She learned to meditate safely with certified instructors, reclaiming the peace she genuinely needed without the contamination of Kevin's abuse. 2 years later, Alexandra had started a foundation to help other survivors of spiritual abuse and pseudotherapy exploitation. She'd also become a vocal advocate for regulation of alternative healing practices and background checks for meditation instructors.
The meditation room where Kevin had violated her trust and her body had been shut down, the building converted to offices for legitimate mental health professionals. But sometimes, when Alexandra practiced meditation now, real meditation, with qualified teachers in safe environments, she still heard his voice whispering in her memory, "Breathe in, breathe out." The difference was that now she controlled her breath, her consciousness, her surrender. She'd learned that true peace didn't require giving up agency, that healing could happen without exploitation, and that the strongest thing she could do was trust herself enough to recognize when trust was being weaponized against her. Every breath she took now was conscious, chosen, hers alone, and that Alexandra had discovered was the most profound meditation of all.